Hey, it's Coach Reese. Today we're going to talk about parabolas. Now we're getting into the conic sections, so we're going to identify some key parts of a parabola. We're going to change a little bit. We are used to a parabola opening up and down. Today we're going to show it where it opens up right and left. Okay? We're going to do a little graphing, but we're going to find those key parts. You need to pay attention, take good notes. Some of this may confuse you, and it's okay. We're going to work through this. All right. So this is what we're typically used to. This is one that's going to open up. This graph will open up or down based on our A value. If it was A is positive, we're going to open upward. If A is negative, we're going to have a reflection over the x-axis. Now over here, this is x equals. Notice what starts it. Y equals, the y-axis opens up and down. X equals, the x-axis opens up left and right, is horizontal. That's how you're going to tell which way your graph is going to open. Now, since this is x equals, it's opens up to the right or left. But in this case, you're going to look at your A value, and it's going to tell you if it's going to open up to the positive numbers or to the negative numbers. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So this is our basic equation. This is our basic equation where we found all our transformations from, okay? But the first thing we need to find is a vertex. Excuse me. The vertex is still going to be found as H, comma, K. That's how you find your vertex. It's going to be that ordered pair. In this case, my H value is inside. We still think opposite when we talk about inside the parentheses, okay? So my H value in this problem right here, the red problem, my opposite, my H is going to be, or my vertex is going to be located at 3, comma, negative 2. That's where my vertex would be, over at 3, negative 2. 3, negative 2, there's my vertex right there. If I had this problem, my vertex is still HK, but look where your H value is located. My H value located is at the back end, okay? So my H value for this problem, my H value is negative 2, and it says HK. K is located inside the parentheses. Anything inside the parentheses, we're thinking the opposite. So the opposite of a negative 3 is a positive 3. In this case, my vertex is going to be at a negative 2, positive 3. Okay, that's one of the big differences, is how we're going to find our vertex. Okay? Now, let's go back to this problem. We know that this is going to open up left and right, but because my A value is positive, I don't have a negative in front. Because my A value is positive, I know my graph is going to open upward, okay? And we're going to have what's called an axis of symmetry. We have found this in the past, but we're going to have an axis of symmetry that goes through the vertex. That's your axis of symmetry, okay? It's an actual line, so you have to write it as an equation of a line. So what I like to say is, since my line crosses the x-axis, I need the x in my equation. And this is going to be x equals 3. Okay? Now my graph, we're not going to get into specifics of graphing just right now. Okay, but I know my graph. I'm just going to sketch something. I know my graph is going to open upward. Okay, that's not an exact thing. But here's the new thing. You're going to learn 2 new words today. You're going to hear a word called a focus. The focus is always going to be inside the curve of the parabola. You're going to have a focus inside the curve of the parabola, and you're going to have another line. Let's write this out. Focus. And you're going to have a line that is outside the parabola that is perpendicular to the axis of symmetry. You're going to have a line that's called a directrix. Okay? and my directrix is perpendicular to the axis of symmetry, okay? And we're going to talk about this, but let me give you a little heads up. This guy right here, this vertex, the distance, let's go yellow. The distance from the vertex to my focus is equal to the distance from my vertex to my directrix. Those two distances are exactly the same, okay? And we're going to show you how to calculate that distance, but from the vertex to the focus is the same as the vertex to the directrix. That vertex is directly in the middle in between those two, okay? Over here, this is a negative. Let's go ahead and do this. This is a negative, and we're going to have, we know that this is going to open up, since this is a negative, it's going to open up to the left, where my x values get negative. I would have an axis of symmetry right there. Since it crosses the y-axis, I would have y equals a positive 3 for my axis of symmetry. I know my graph is going to open up to the left because it's negative. My a value is negative. I will have a point that is a focus inside the curve. I will have a line on the outside called my directrix, okay? That's just a brief summary of what we're about to do, okay? So let's do a couple examples, but you know what is coming. We're going to find these 4 things. The vertex, I'm just going to reinforce this. The vertex is equal distance from the focus and the directrix. You need to meet it. That vertex is right in the middle, okay? The distance between the vertex and the focus, and I could say directrix, all right? But the vertex and the focus is P. And how do you find that? P is equal to 1 over 4a. The a value is in front of your parentheses. Remember, the a value is going to tell you if you had a stretch or a compression or a shrink, okay? And we're going to use that a value. But what we're saying is, if you have a graph, if we have a graph, and this is my vertex, and this is my focus, from here to here, we're going to say that distance is P. From the focus to the vertex is P. And we calculate that distance by saying 1 over 4 times A. Now be careful, this does not say 1 over 4 times A here. The A is in the denominator. That A value is in the denominator, so you have to multiply times the 4 down there. And we'll talk about that in just a second, okay? All right, so this is what we're talking about. This is what's going to happen. Let's go ahead and work a problem. We'll start simple, okay? All right, so here's my equation. Y equals negative 2, parentheses, x plus 5 squared minus 6. We're going to find the vertex, okay? Well, we know that this is y equals, so we know we're going to open up or down because it's y equals. In this case, because there's a negative in front, I know my graph is going to open downward, okay? So we're going to erase that. We know it's going to open downward, okay? So find my vertex. We're going to say my h value is going to be negative 5. My k value is going to be a negative 6. There is the vertex. And we can come over here. Let me bump this just a little bit. Not too much. And we're going to say negative 5, negative 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my vertex. I do know, I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about this. I do know that my graph is going to end up opening downward. I'm not so concerned right now, we're going to put this on the back burner, of whether it's a stretch to where it gets skinny or a compression where it's going to get flatter or wider. Okay, so we'll deal with that later. We're going to talk about the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the line that goes right down the middle of my parabola. That could be my axis of symmetry. And we're going to say I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I touch the x-axis, so we're going to say that x equals a -5. Now, don't just write -5. It's a pet peeve for your teachers. It's a line, so you have to write it as an equation of a line. Don't just write -5. They're going to take off points, they're going to get you, okay? All right, your focus. Now, your focus is going to be inside the curve, okay? We're going to go down, okay? So let's blow this up. I have a curve. I have a vertex. My focus is going to be somewhere inside. This is just blown up, okay? From here to here is P. That distance is P. So I'm going to say P equals 1/4 times whatever my A value is. My A value is -2, okay? So my A value, so we're going to say what we're going, times -2. So P is going to equal a -1/8. Okay? That means to get there, I have to go down 1/8. Now you understand, why did I drop the negative? Why is it this not a negative? Why didn't I write that? Because distance is always positive. Even if you take a step backwards, you've taken a positive distance, okay? So I'm not really concerned about the negative or the positive, okay? Distance is always positive. So we're going to go down 8. And since we're going to go down 8, we're going to subtract 8. But what are we going to subtract 8 from? Look at your vertex. My vertex is at -5, -6. That's my vertex. Right here, just my vertex. I'm going down, so I'm going to subtract 1/8 from -6. Okay? And it turns out that actually it's kind of messing with you, but we're going to do this on our paper. We're going to say -6 minus 1/8. Now, how do we add fractions? Well, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can get a common denominator. We can treat this as -6/1. We can multiply the bottom times 8, the top times 8, and this can give us -48/8. A -48 and a -1 will give us a -49/8. Okay? Now, big question. You're probably going to go, why did you subtract it? Why did you mess with the -6? Well, I'm going up and down, and the y value goes up and down, so we made an adjustment to the y value, not to the -5, because we were not going left and right, we were going up and down by 1/8, okay? So, that's where you make your adjustment. If I'm going up and down, we change the y value. So the location of my focus is now what stayed the same. The -5 stayed the same, but the y value changed. So we're going to say that my focus will now be at -5, -49/8. Now, if you're not good with fractions, you can use your calculator. Your calculator will take care of you. But we think we should practice in using some math skills we've learned, how to get a common denominator and add and subtract fractions. Okay? All right, so this is how you're going to take care of what we have now as our focus. It's going to be 1/8. It's hard to graph 1/8, but we're going to put a dot in there. Okay? But we now, let me erase this. We now have what's called a directrix. The directrix is a line outside of the parabola. So we have a line outside the parabola. It's going to look something like this. It's going to be perpendicular. It's going to be perpendicular to the axis of symmetry. It's going to touch, or it's going to cross the y-axis. So we're going to write it as y equals some number, because it's a line. Okay? How do we calculate it? Well, it's the same distance. If from the vertex to the focus was 1/8, the distance, let me bump this just a little bit, the distance from my vertex to my focus is also 1/8. So you find your vertex, you went 1/8 to find your focus, you're going to go 1/8 to get to your directrix. Now, we're going up and down still. We're still going up and down, so that means we change the y value. But since we go up, we're going to add to the number -6. So when we went down, we subtracted. When we go up, we add. So you're going to say -6 plus 1/8. We still get that common denominator. Where we change this, if you remember this, we changed this to times 8 times 8. We had -48 over 8. -48 plus 1 is a -47 over 8. That's where we're located. That's my equation of -47 over 8. Now, here's my thing. You have to be careful, and I don't need you to quit just because we start showing up with fractions, okay? Use your calculator for help, all right? But know which variable that we're making adjustments to. Now, you're going to graph. We had to graph, and we're going to have to, you're going to say, I need to go up 1/8. How do you know what 1/8 is on a graph? Just get close. Just do the best you can, okay? So we have found the vertex. We found the axis of symmetry. Let me erase this so you can see this cleaner. Okay. We have found our focus, and we have found our directrix, okay? Let's try another problem. All right, so we're looking at this problem. We're looking at number 3, okay? Notice, real quick, let me bump this just a tad. Notice that this is x equals, okay? The x-axis runs horizontally, left and right, so I know my graph is either going to open up to the left or it's going to open up to the right. But because it's an x, I know it's not going to open up and down. It's got to go left or right, okay? My a value is negative. And so I look at my x-axis. The negative numbers go to the left. So that means my graph is going to open up to the left. If this a value was positive, then I would open up to the right where my positive x values were. All right? So this just eliminated that graph. Okay? We're going to open up. Now we need to find our vertex. And remember where you find this from. Okay? This is your y. All right, so this is going to be my k value inside. This is my h value over here. Okay? Because that was on the previous page. If you need to go back, you can look at it. But my vertex is still hk. My vertex will be -6, comma, -1. Because remember, inside the parentheses, we're still thinking opposite. Okay? So we're going to go over to our graph. Let me bump this just a little bit. Okay? At -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -1. There's my vertex. Okay? I know that my graph is going to open to the left. We've just determined that guy right there. We need an axis of symmetry. It's going to cut it in half. It's going to go through the vertex. My axis of symmetry is going to go right through the vertex. It's going to split it. We're going horizontal. Now my axis of symmetry touches the y-axis. It crosses the y-axis. So I'm going to use y equals. And in this case, it touches at y equals -1. Okay? Now we need to find our focus and our directrix. Our focus will be on the axis of symmetry, and we're going to have to move left and right to find these two things. So if we're going to move left and right to find these, we're going to have to make an adjustment. We're going to have to add or subtract to my x value because we're going left and right. Okay? The question is how much? So here's what we do. We need to go P. P is the distance. My graph is here. I have a vertex. I have a focus. This distance, remember that distance is called P. Okay? So we're going to say that P equals 1 over 4 times, what is my A value? 1/2. Okay? Now remember, this is distance. We're not worried about the positive, negative stuff. So we're going to multiply times 1/2. Be careful. That's how it should be written. 1 over 4 times 1/2. Okay? That does not mean, this is what you are not supposed to do. Do not go 1 over 4 times 1/2. That A value is down level. It's down in the denominator. It's even with the 4. Don't put it up here higher. Okay? Now, some of these fractions can get difficult, but this is the easiest way I know how to teach you to do this. When you end up multiplying a fraction right here, I want you to do this. 1 over 4 times the reciprocal. That will give you 2 over 4, which reduces to 1/2. So when you take your equation and it goes 1 over 4 times A, if your A value is a fraction, just multiply times the reciprocal. It's the quickest, easiest way. So in this case, you're going to tell me that P equals 1/2. I need to go, let's talk about this. I need to go this way 1/2 units. So if I'm going towards the negative numbers, if I'm going to the left, I'm going to have to subtract. I am subtracting 1/2. Okay? So look at your vertex. Here's my vertex at -6, -1. Let me write this right here. -6, -1. And we're going to the left. We're going to subtract. So I'm going to ask you to go -1/2. So we're saying -6 minus 1/2. Some of you that's okay, but some of us it's going to bother us. You can put it in the calculator. We're going to get a common denominator. We're going to make this 6 over 1. We're going to multiply times 2. Times 2 times 2. I'm going to get -12 over 2. A -12 and a -1 is -13 over 2. Now, I had to slide left. I'm at -13 over 2, but I did not change my height. I did not change my y value. So my y value will stay the same. So at this point, my focus is going to be located at -13 over 2, comma, we stay the same at -1. There is your focus. Okay? Let me erase this because we're going to go find our directrix. Now, our directrix is a line outside. It's outside the parabola and it's perpendicular to the axis of symmetry. But if I go to the left to find that focus, I'm going to go to the right to find that directrix. And if I'm going to the right, which means my numbers are getting bigger, I'm going to add 1/2. So we're going to go to my vertex. We're going to go to the x value because we're going left and right. We're going to add 1/2. Now, still, we're going to do with it just like we've been doing. We're going to say -6 over 1 plus 1/2. We get that common denominator again. We're going to multiply times 2 times 2. We're going to get -12 over 2. But -12 plus 1 is -11 over 2. Now, I'm not looking for a point. This is a line. So we write it as an equation of a line. So my line crosses the x-axis. So we're going to say x equals, and what does x equal? Negative 11 over 2. That's all I need. That's the equation of that line. Okay? So hopefully we've done 2 examples. You know how to find the vertex if it opens up left and right, the axis of symmetry, how to find your focus and your directrix. Okay? I know. This is messing with you with those fractions and trying to add and subtract the fractions and move and then find the focus and the directrix. Okay? But it gets worse. It gets worse. Here we go. Be patient. Don't get mad. Okay? So now look what we're going to do to you. We're going to scramble the equation. Okay? And you're going to have to complete the square. Yeah, you got to complete the square to put it in vertex form. Okay? So the first thing I want you to do is look which variable is not squared. But why are we doing this? Because if you look at this, the x is not squared. But this exponent would go to the 2 and make the y squared. Okay? So we're trying to determine of the 2 variables, the y and the x, which one is not squared. And that's who's going to go first. So in this case, okay, in this case, my x is not squared, so we're going to say x, and then we're going to move everything that deals with the y, everything else goes to the right. So you're going to take the opposite and push it to the other side of the equation. So this is going to give me x equals, this is going to turn into a positive 2y squared. This will turn into a positive 24y. This will turn into a positive 67. Okay, take a deep breath. Now we need to complete the square. Okay? Now, you know that I do things a little bit different than most Algebra 2 teachers, but it works. It works like a charm. Okay? We're going to do the bounce method. Okay? All right, so here, I need you to create, this is where I'm weird, okay, besides other places. We're going to create a second equation. Okay, so we're going to move the 67 to the other side by subtracting. We're going to go minus 67, minus 67. We're going to ignore the x right now. So we're going to have 2y squared plus 24y plus blank equals negative 67 plus blank. So now we have created a blank so we can complete the square. Okay? But on this problem, we have a leading coefficient that's not 1. We have that 2. And we're going to ask you to factor out that 2. Okay? We did this in the fall, so this should be just a refresher, but I know it's been a long time. I'm going to ask you to factor out the 2. And that's going to give me y squared plus 12y plus blank equals negative 67, excuse me, that's a positive 67, I don't know. Just look at that. To move this, no, that's right, I was right, I'm right, I'm sorry. Shouldn't second guess myself. Plus blank, it should be a negative 67. Okay, we're okay. All right, so here's my rule. Here's the rule that we do. If you factor, which we just did, we factored out a 2. If you factor, I don't want that to be in red. If we factor, we will bounce. And if you don't know, if you don't remember this from the fall, this is what I'm talking about, okay? So we're going to say 2. I'm going to ask you to take half of your b value. This is your a value right here. Excuse me. Okay? This is my a value, but half of b. So we're going to say half of 12 is 6, okay? So we're going to take half of 12, and we're going to go y plus 6, parentheses squared. We're going to take half of 12 and get 6, and then we're going to ask you to square it and get 36. Half of your b, and then square it. But here's the trick. You got to bounce. You have to bounce this 2 into the 36. 2 times 36 is 72. 72 minus 67, that's going to equal a positive 5. I need to bring the 5 back home. I'm going to subtract 5, and then I'm going to bring my x back down. And I'm going to get x equals 2 y plus 6 squared minus 5. Now, that is in vertex form. That's probably the toughest thing we're going to ask you to do, because we're asking you to complete the square, and we're asking you to deal with that coefficient using the bounce method. So let's go back over here now. What we have? I have x equals 2y, 2 parentheses, y plus 6 squared minus 5. It has an x in front. Since it has an x in front, I know it's going to open left or right. But my 2 is positive. My 2 is positive, so I'm going to know I'm going to open up to the right side. Okay? But we're going to find my vertex. My vertex is going to be, in this case, here's my h. It's going to be -5, comma, -6. There's my vertex. Okay? Now, we got to find our axis of symmetry. I can't do this without sketching a graph. This is me. I'm kind of limited. I'm a visual person. So I'm going to sketch a graph real quick. Okay? Let me see if I can do it up here. -5, -6. Okay? We're going to be over here somewhere. We're going to open up. Oops. We're going to open up this way to the right. Okay? We're going to have an axis of symmetry that is going to go through the vertex. The axis of symmetry is going to go through the vertex. It's going to be y equals, in this case, what number is it going to go through? It's going to go through -6. That's my y value. We need to find our focus. Our focus is going to be on the inside. So since we're going to go left and right to find our focus and our directrix, we're going to change the x value. So go look at your vertex. We're going to make an adjustment to that -5. I need to go to the right. I'm not sure how much I need to go. My p-value, I'm going to erase this. We've got to know. We've got to have some room. Sorry. My p-value, p equals 1/4 times a. Remember, the a is in the denominator. My a value is 2. So we're looking at p equals 1/4 times 2. That's going to equal 1/8. I need to add, I'm going to the right, I need to add 1/8 to my -5. So I'm going to go, excuse me. That would have been tragic. Okay. So I'm going to add, I'm going to say -5 plus 1/8. I'm going to change this to a fraction. I'm going to multiply the top times 8, the bottom times 8. This is going to get me -40/8. -40 plus 1 is going to give me a -39/8. My x value has changed, but my y value has not changed because we're going to stay on this horizontal line. So my focus will be at -39/8, comma, stays the same, -6. There's the location of my focus. My directrix. my directrix will be outside of the focus on the back side right here. It's going to cross the x-axis, so we're going to say x equals some number. But this case, since I'm going to the left, we're going to have to subtract 1/8. So let's do this. This time we're going to say -5 minus 1/8. Still going to get that common denominator. We're going to multiply the bottom times 8, the top times 8. We're going to get -40, but a -40 and a -1 is a -41/8. That is my directrix, a -41/8. Okay? And then you can graph it, we can plot some points, we can go Control T, you can find some points to draw your smooth curve for your parabola. But the hard part is finding these things: the vertex, the axis of symmetry, the focus, and the directrix. Okay? Now, it's going to take some practice, but don't panic. I got to tell you something. This is what bothers me. Okay? We completed the square here. Now, we're going to do some other shapes. We're going to do a circle. We're going to do something called an ellipse and something called a hyperbola. And every single one of those shapes, we're going to have to complete the square. So you're just going to have to take a deep breath and do some practice, and you're going to be okay. And if you get stuck, if you mess it up, that's okay. Nobody expects you to be perfect. But ask questions and let us help you to get unstuck. Okay? So we put a lot on your plate just with this little amount, but that's still a lot to think about to find these 4 things. Okay? Hey, do what you can do, and please let us help you. Good luck.